What's up, gangsters? It's a fine sunny day over here at Rube Goldberg Enterprises. But I have been out of action for like the last week or so, getting zero work done. Well, not much, because I've been fighting off yet another stupid cold. But I am feeling a bit randier today, and I've got that sexy cold voice going on, so I thought it would be a good day to do a video, especially since I've been waiting to do this one for like the last 5 days. This should be interesting. So, if you hang out on the internet at all, message boards, Facebook groups, and that sort of thing, you know that there are certain topics that are just pretty much guaranteed to light people up, right? It's always been that way. I've been doing message boards and that sort of thing since the mid-90s when we were all on Usenet news groups. And, look, there's certain topics that are guaranteed to result in a flame war and copious amounts of butthurt. And in the model making world, a couple of them come to mind. Tamiya decals, Airfix kits, panel lines. Those things always seem to result in some arguing back and forth. And, mostly it's good-natured. Look, we're dudes. We like to debate shit. We've been doing it ever since we hit the ground, arguing with each other about who's the hottest chick, what's the fastest car, what's the greatest sports team. That's just part of how we socialize as dudes, and that's all good. Sometimes things can get a little bit heated, obviously, and it seems like that there's one particular model making topic where that is more likely than any other. Primers. I know you guys have seen it too. Anytime the discussion turns to primers, it can be, what's the best primer? Should I prime my model at all? I just bought such and such primer. Is it any good? What pressure should I spray my primer at? It doesn't matter. There's going to be somebody who gets eyes of rage. My favorite is when some guy asks, what pressure should I spray my Badger Stynylrez primer? And there's always that one dude who's got to go in all caps and say, I never use primer. I've been modeling for 37 years and I never use primer and I never have any problems and my models are awesome. And then, inevitably he posts a picture of his model from way over here to prove his point. So, anyway, but that's sort of a different rant. The point is that one of those primer threads came up a couple of days ago when my fellow model maker and buddy Matt McDougall posted the following photos. You can see them right here. What happened is that Matt and Jimmy D and I are doing a buddy build for the Scale Modelers Critique Group. And we are each building this lovely Tamiya Porsche 934 kit. Now, for some crazy reason, because Matt's a brave guy, he's decided that he's doing a color scheme that is pink. And so, instead of using his normal Mr. Surfacer 1500 cut with Mr. Leveling Thinner in black, to do his priming, he wanted to prime in white because, you really would like to have a white base coat underneath a red or a pink. I personally am going to prime mine in my favorite lacquer primer, which is all-clad microfiller black 309, and then I'm going to put a coat of white paint on top of it, but more on that in a second. Anyway, the point is, Matt wanted to prime in white, so because he was already going to buy zero paint, for the color coat, he decided to try Zero's white microfiller primer. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Zero, these guys are a line of paints that are produced in the UK and distributed mostly by a company called Hero Boy. That's a good place to get them. But Zero also has their own website that you can check out, and it is, in fact, www.zero-paints.co. And if you're not familiar with this stuff, it's fantastic. It is formulated, I'll just read exactly what it says here on the bottle. Color matched, airbrush ready, automotive model paints. And that's what these guys are known for. If you want, the exact color of blue that's on the McLaren Red Bull Formula One car, these guys have it. And it's really good stuff. Lots of people have really good luck with it. So anyway, Matt's going to use it, decided he might as well try their microfiller primer as well. Now, as far as we know, that microfiller primer is a lacquer. I should say that as far as Zero paints themselves go, I'm not really sure exactly what they are. The word is that they're lacquers, but if you look on their website, it says that they're solvent-based, but not exactly the same as lacquers. So what that really means is anybody's guess. Maybe it means that they're urethanes, because they do also offer a 2K urethane clear that is really nice. I don't know. I don't know why we can't just be better about labeling and just say right on the bottle exactly what it is. But that's sort of a different rant as well. The bottom line is that you can treat this stuff pretty much as lacquer, as far as everybody knows, and that goes for the Zero microfiller primer as well. Anyway, as you can see from the photos, things did not go well. Matt put the primer down, and about a week later, he picked up the shell of the Porsche, and the primer was flaking off like it was some sort of 934 shaped flaky pastry. And in fact, it came off so easily that he could just use air from his airbrush and knock it off. And that resulted in the somewhat angry post that Matt made, and I'll blame him for that. I'd be pissed too. Anyway, there ensued much butthurt and many claims of, you're doing it wrong, you didn't wash the model well enough first, you didn't key it well enough first, blah, 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 blah. If you don't know what keying means, that's basically just the practice of putting a light sanding on the surface of whatever you're about to paint, so that the paint gets a little better tooth, gets better grip, basically, more traction. Anyhow, so Matt did another test. He took the fuselage from a bare plastic fuselage from a paint mule that he had, and he sprayed 3 primers on it. His favorite, Mr. Surfacer, some of a brand new bottle of Stynel Res that he got, and some of the Zero primer. And he did this just a day or two ago. And the next morning, the Zero stuff was coming off. And we can't figure out why. My personal theory is that maybe, because look, nobody's reported any trouble with Zero primer. Never heard of any issues with it. To be fair, I haven't heard much of anything about it, but I just want to make that clear. This is the first time anybody's reported any problems. So I have a theory that there's nothing wrong with the primer, but maybe some of their regular white paint got put in the primer bottle. Now, fortunately, I happen to have a bottle of the regular white right here, because that's going to be the base coat for my Porsche. Anyway, so it's bizarre. There's no reason why this should happen. Matt did a light key on the body of the Porsche, although I think he and lots of other people would argue that with a lacquer, you really shouldn't have to. I mean, a lacquer, because of the effect that it has on polystyrene, should pretty much automatically key itself to bare plastic, and that's been my experience as well. And he did wash the shell in soap and water before he sprayed it, so it's a mystery. The little chunk of the P40 fuselage that he tested a couple of days ago, he did not key, he didn't wash it, he didn't do anything to it, and the Zero primer was the only thing that peeled off of it. So, there you go, makes you wonder. But we try to be objective about these things. So, look what I have here in the mail today. This is a box from Matt McDougall, and it contains, as far as I know, one bottle of Zero white microfiller primer, and we are going to test it out right now. So, let's get to it. All right, so we are going to do this by the book. You guys can see that this box is unopened. It is addressed to myself here at Pimp Daddy Paint Testing Labs, which is a subsidiary of Rube Goldberg Enterprises, and kind of an inside joke there. Anyway, this box is unopened, and I'm about to cut it open and take out this bottle of primer. So you'll just have to bear with me while I get into it with this ridiculously dull X-Acto knife blade, and we'll see what we've got. Man, I need to replace that blade. Okay. Sorry, I keep bumping the camera. Okay, so here we go. Let me move this a little bit. Alright, so there it is. There is the mysterious bottle of primer, and we are going to get that out and have a look. Okay. Alright, I'm not going to screw around here with this Ziploc bag. Sorry, Matt. I hate to waste your lovely bag, but it is what it is. Alright, so there we go. Now, this, because of the ride over the bumpy farm road this morning in the mail truck, is probably already pretty well shaken up. You can hear that it's got a ball in it, as added by Mr. McDougall, because he did do a very thorough job of shaking it up. All right, as you can see, hopefully you can see, the microfiller can be seen in there. There's a kind of a chunk of it stuck to the side of the jar there. But you can see that this is definitely shaken up. It's not collected on the bottom of the jar. You know, it's mixed up, but we're going to stir it and we're going to shake it. I'm not great at shaking paint, but we're going to do our best to make sure that that's not an issue in this test. Now, let's also take a look at the label here. White primer, pre-thinned for airbrushing. Stir until primer is mixed completely with thinners, ensuring you are not just spraying white thinners. That's a good idea, obviously. Let's see here. Application instructions. Spray at 15 to 40 psi. That's quite a wide range. Medium cross coats are recommended. For additional thinning and cleaning of equipment, use cellulose thinners. So that's what I mean when I say you can essentially treat this stuff as a lacquer. Now, let's take a look at the bottle of regular zero white paint. Okay, first thing to notice is on the side of it, it does not say anything about thinning it with cellulose thinners. It just says it's pre-thinned, but you can clean this stuff up with lacquer thinner. Lacquer thinner is what we call cellulose thinner over here in the good old US of A for you Brit guys. Okay, now let's take a look at this. You can see this hasn't been shaken up. There is definitely pigment on the bottom of the bottle. So, and I haven't opened this one. It's brand new. I got it from my favorite guy at Hobby World USA. Zero used to only be available across the pond, but Matt Bowl, in his wisdom, decided that Hobby World USA would carry it, and so you guys can get pretty much all the colors through him. All right, so I'm going to have to stir that up, but we'll get to that. All right, now we're going to compare it with the All-Clad microfiller primer in black. And this, as you can see, says apply 1 to 2 medium coats, allow 30 minutes between coats, polishing, wet or dry, micromesh, blah, blah, blah. Clean airbrush with All-Clad, whatever. Okay, spray at 15 to 18 psi. This stuff is definitely a lacquer, and it behaves perfectly, or cleans up perfectly with lacquer thinner. Now, you can see that, okay, it hadn't been shaken up, and you can see all of the microfiber collected down there at the bottom. This is a brand new bottle. It's been sitting on my shelf for months. And the only thing I've done is I've dropped a nut in there. You can see it there on the bottom. You can hear it there, but I haven't shaken this up at all. We're going to save that. So, then I also have got here a bottle of my trusty Stynylrez that I use a lot because most of the time it works great. It does 90% of what an old school lacquer primer will do. And if I don't have to deal with lacquer, spraying lacquer and dealing with all the fumes, then I won't. So I used the shit out of this stuff. And this is also now available through UMP, Ultimate Modeling Products. They're private labeling it from Badger. So you guys from across the pond can now get this stuff too, much more easily. And as you can see, it also has not been shaken. So we're going to do a bunch of shaking, and I'm going to not make you deal with looking at all the shaking and the stirring. I'm going to turn the camera off while I take care of that, so I'll be back in a second. Actually, I am going to take care of this one, at least on camera, okay? Because I want you guys to know exactly what I do to it. So, at any rate, I just took the lid off, and I'm got the safety cap out of it, which is a nice touch. And let me see, what can I use to stir this up? I've got I don't want to use that. That's got paint on it already. I don't want to contaminate it. I'm looking for something that I can put in there that's not already contaminated. I think I'm going to just use, oh, goodness me. I've got an old paintbrush here. I'm just going to use this and make sure that everything is agitated. I wish I had one of those fancy motorized Badger stir stick things. Maybe this will be my inspiration to get one. But for today, we're just going to rock it old school. Okay, now you can see, all right, there's nothing gooped up on the handle there. So I think we can conclude that that's pretty well stirred up. And this is why I did not want to use something that was contaminated, because as you can see, this stuff is hot. As you can see, a bunch of the red paint from the brush just came right off. It happened so fast I didn't even realize it was happening. And see, now it's on my fingers. So that was a bad choice. But I think that is not going to have any effect on this stuff. It shouldn't. Bottom line is, it's well stirred up. You definitely can see that. So let's get the lid back on here, which I've now gone and dropped. But I'm going to get the lid back on there. And it'll at least shake it up so that whatever came off of that paintbrush handle is at least distributed in there. Okay. Okay, there we go. Don't see any issues. It's slightly pink, I suppose, but it's primer. We don't care. So, there you go. That's the sample. That's the primer, the zero primer sample. Now, I am going to go ahead and get these other ones mixed up, and what do you bet? I'm not going to use the red paintbrush handle to do any more stirring. I'll be right back. Okay, we are all shaken and stirred. I used one of my trusty Tamiya stir sticks to stir the zero white. I don't know why I didn't think of using that the first time, but hey, that's why they call us Rube Goldberg Enterprises. Now, for the test subject, okay, you can see that I have the brand new unopened kit here. Now, Matt's is the orange Jägermeister version, but it's the same. It's the same kit. Now, what I'm going to do is I am not going to shoot primer just for the purposes of this experiment on the car body. I could strip it off afterwards and everything would be fine, but I'm not quite that dedicated. Hopefully that's not going to completely destroy all credibility associated with my scientific method here, because what I am going to do instead is use the inside of the bottom part of the chassis. Okay, none of that's going to show after the thing is all put together. It has a fairly decent shine on it. Okay, it's not quite as shiny as the body itself, but it's pretty darn close. We'll take the body out and we'll have a look at that, because one of the complaints about what Matt did was that he failed to put a sufficiently rough scratch on the surface of his body, and that's not a totally invalid thing, except Matt did that. He keyed it down with micro mesh, but you can see that right out of the box, that's a pretty glossy piece of plastic. And so it certainly might be advisable to put a bit of a key on it. But again, he tested the stuff on another piece of plastic from a different company a few days later and had the same result. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to spray it right there on that. And I'm not going to key it at all, but what I am going to do is, after I get some of this stuff out of my way here, is I'm going to clean that. Let's see. How about this? How about if I use, as a light solvent that should cut any mold release, although I really, really doubt that there is any on there, and I'll explain that in a second. Okay, some UMP thinner, which is just an alcohol-based thinner. So I'm going to just squirt some all over this rag, and we are going to just clean that off. Now, why do I say there's probably no mold release on there? Because there pretty much isn't going to be any on a modern kit, especially from a company like Tamiya. There are lots of ways that you can produce a tool that does not require mold release. If it's well designed and well built, and the molding is not too demanding, it shouldn't need any in the first place. But even if they did use mold release, there's not any evidence of it on here, and that would be because they run it through an automated washing station before it goes into the kit box. So, at any rate, you can see that I have pretty thoroughly swabbed this thing down with what's essentially just a blend of isopropyl alcohol. So, that should take care of any potential residue that might be there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this thing up into 4 sections. I may have to flip it over and work on both sides. Don't really want to do that. It's not that big of a deal. I'd like to keep all of them together. Let's see. Okay, so here's what I've decided to do. I just put a little bit of tape on here to divide this up into 3 sections. And I'm going to spray over here with the Zero primer. I'm going to spray here in the middle with the Stynylrez. And then I'm going to spray over here with the actual Zero white base color. And then, because this side of this thing is going to get black primer anyway, I'm going to just spray this whole side of it with the All-Clad 309. So that'll get me my 4 samples, and I think that'll be effective. Now, I did touch it a little bit while I was putting the tape on there. So here we go again. Gonna come back and clean that off just to make sure that we haven't done anything that is incorrect. So you can see that's been wiped down, most especially in that area where I'm going to spray the Zero primer. Okay, now everything else I think is about ready. I'm going to just shoot this with my Iwata Neo, which is because it happens to be on the end of the hose and no other good reason. But that's got a 0.35 millimeter needle in it. I've got the compressor turned up to about 30 psi, which is what I use when I spray Stynylrez. And I'm going to do it first because it requires the higher pressure. So then that way I can turn the compressor down and spray the other 3 materials all on a lower pressure. So here's what we're going to do. Let's take a look here. I also want to mention the conditions, okay, it is, as you can see, it is Monday. We don't want to know what's new in calendar. I just got a new phone. It is Monday, March the 21st at, hold on a minute here. Clumsy hands are kind of tired. All right, it is, okay, I'll figure this out. It is Monday, March the 21st, 2016 at 2:25 in the afternoon. And to make this even more science-y, let's do this. The weather is sunny and 77, and the conditions are, you can see it is quite dry today. Humidity 15%. That's pretty normal weather for March out here in the middle of nowhere where I live. Now, kind of one reason why I wanted to point that out is because the conditions in Austin, where Matt lives, are a bit more humid, but he's an experienced guy. He's not going to spray lacquers on a rainy day because he knows that that's a bad idea. And so the ambient humidity down there when he did this was probably a little wetter, but not like, you know, Florida or something. So I certainly don't think that was the cause of his troubles. Now, what I'm going to do is get the camera reoriented over here to the Rube Goldberg Enterprises paint booth, and we'll see if we can zoom in a little bit. My ability to video in the paint booth is not that great. My arm won't, my video camera arm doesn't really reach over there very well, but this should get us going at least. Get all the materials ready here. May have to go hunting for some pipettes. I think I've got, yeah, I've got at least one clean one in there. Okay, now here we go. Just going to add a little bit of Stynylrez straight into the cup. Not very much. This is not a big test, so not a whole lot going to be required. Got that spraying just fine, and I'm going to just do it like I normally would right there on that section. Lay down kind of a thin, dry layer, give it a second. It's already starting to dry off. Then come back. And that's a fairly nice, thick coat. Not super thick. I think you saw me put 3 layers on there. So that's got some Stynylrez in place. Alright, now what I'm not going to do is leave the camera on while I clean my airbrush between each one of these things. So, I'll be right back. Okay, so I got the Stynylrez all cleaned out, and you can tell I sound different. That's because I've put a mask on. I'm going to be spraying these lacquers, and I don't want to end up high as a kite, so definitely, you know, that's always a good idea when you're spraying lacquers. Okay, now, the last thing I'm going to put through this airbrush is a little bit of lacquer thinner. Okay, that's all that is in that bottle. And we'll backflow it just a little bit. You can see in there, hopefully, that that's clean. Nothing in there that should contaminate the test. Okay, and I've got a brand new clean pipette here, and I'm going to grab a little bit of the zero. Let's make sure that we're getting this on
camera. This is when I wish I had another camera operator. Okay, so let's get the bottle over here so you can see it. And I'm going to get just a bit, not a whole lot. Drop it right there in the brush. This stuff's pretty thin. Nothing wrong with that though. It's made to be that way. Okay, so let's get sort of zoomed back in. On the spray booth, actually ran out. You can see I'm spraying a little bit larger area. I want to make sure and give this stuff a fair shot, so I'm spraying it in a larger area. And I want to make sure I've got even coverage. I've got 3 layers on this area right here, and I've only really got 2 on this area. So let's get some more in there. Okay, I think I've got about what I would consider a decent primer coverage there. There's still a little bit of plastic showing through, but I really don't feel like I need to go any thicker than that in order to create a decent traction layer. Now, if I were going to do a bunch of sanding and body work, then I definitely would want a thicker layer, but I really want to kind of test this at what I feel like would be its minimum thickness and see how it works. Okay, now I'm going to put in just a little bit of the straight zero white lacquer, and we're going to see what that does. Now, there's really not a great reason to do this because this is not how you would normally apply this paint. You'd put it on top of a coat of primer, obviously, but I'm curious to see what kind of adhesion I get with Zero's regular paint just sprayed onto bare plastic. So that's why I'm doing that. I have no idea what's going to happen. In fact, I have no idea what's going to happen with any of this. This stuff may not peel off of here at all. We may see nothing unusual. But the way I look at it is, no matter what happens, we'll all learn something. So here goes. Okay, I've got the airbrush pretty well cleaned out. I'm not too worried about it because this stuff just don't care. Alright, you can see that I've got it almost 100% shaken up. There's not much, if any, of that microfiller left on the bottom there. It took a lot of shaking, but that's just the way it is with a brand new bottle of this stuff. It's got quite a bit of whatever they put in it for filler. And that's part of why it does its job. Some people would suggest that microfiller will fill in detail, but that's an unwarranted fear I have found, and you'll see that here pretty directly. I'm going to go ahead and just dump some of it right here into the paint cup. Probably way more than I need, but that's okay. Alright, I'm still set at the same pressure I was using for the white stuff, about 18-20 psi, and I'm going to just go ahead and blow some of this on the bottom here. Now, I did not clean or do anything to this side of this piece. This has not been wiped down with alcohol at all. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit this middle portion of it.
Okay, I've got everything cleaned up, and let's take a look at the time, because this test won't be complete until tomorrow, or maybe even a week from now. It depends. If I wake up tomorrow and and that zero primer has fallen off of this thing, then the test will be done. If it's not, then maybe I'll wait a week and see what it looks like then. But at any rate, you can see that it's now about a half an hour later than it was last time we checked. And let's take a look at what we've got going here with these 3 layers of primer. Let's zoom in a little bit, see how things look at the moment. Okay, let's go ahead and peel the tape off of here. I'm not going to be too concerned about doing that gently. Let's just get it out of the way. Okay. Alright, so as you can see, the Stynylrez has got lots of overspray on it. I don't know if you guys could tell, but when I was spraying the Zero materials, it was fogging up the booth like nobody's business. The stuff is very lightweight and floats around a lot more than the Stynylrez does. But no big deal. You can see that we've got a pretty uniform layer of it on there, even though it's got a bunch of overspray from the other stuff. Not a big deal as far as the Stynylrez is concerned. You can, in fact, spray lacquer on top of Stynylrez, even though Stynylrez is a water-based polyurethane primer. Okay, now let's take a look at the area where we put the Zero stuff. Now, you can see a couple of things. Obviously, I didn't do a real good job of removing the dust before I sprayed this thing, but where did all that stuff come from? One of those is a particle from my rag for sure, but look down in here at the bottom of that area where those 2 angles meet. And this is one of the things that Matt found with this stuff, is that it had a tendency to dust up very easily. Now, a corner like that is a perfect place for that to happen if the material is really lightweight. I think you've probably, if you guys build aircraft, if you've ever done something like a Spitfire or a Mustang that's got that nice filleted wing root, that you've got to really spray small in that area, because dusting is a real problem because of the way that the airflow gets trapped in that corner. But anyway, you can see that we've got, aside from that, a pretty decent, if thin, coat of primer. Now let's look at the area where I sprayed just the Zero white base coat. Now that looks looks awesome, right? I mean, it's thin. It would be thick enough for just a white base coat. If you were going to go on top of that with some red paint or yellow paint or whatever. But I mean, right onto the plastic with no issues whatsoever that I can see. And there shouldn't be, really. Again, that material, I don't know that it's a lacquer, but it is solvent-based. It should get a grip on that plastic without a problem. So let's sort of move back and take another nice, long, slow look at all three of these areas at the same time. It's pretty straightforward, right? At this point, you would not conclude that there were any issues whatsoever. Now, let's flip it over and take a look at the All-Clad 309. Now, the first thing you're going to notice about that is that it's got a little bit of a sheen to it, and that's characteristic of the All-Clad primer. In fact, you can get it to spray up to a pretty nice gloss if you keep going. But at that point, you might definitely have enough layers that it would be a problem for your detail. But something to keep in mind, for certain applications where you might actually want to do that. But you can see that's a pretty robust layer of primer there. Nothing at all to complain about with that. It's pretty well leveled out and done its thing. It's got a little bit of a texture to it, a little bit of an orange peel going on there, which may be because it's pretty hot and it may craze the plastic a little bit. But again, especially if you're going to sand all that down, that's not a big deal. So, at any rate, there we go. What I'm going to do now is just leave this alone and not touch it for at least 24 hours. And we'll come back tomorrow and see how things look. Okay, so here we are back about 24 hours later than the last time we looked at this. As you can see, it is, almost exactly 24 hours. I couldn't have planned it better. So, what do we know? The answer is not much. As you can see, nothing dramatic has happened. This is the area where I sprayed the zero primer and there's no peeling. And, I don't even know what to make of that. I was talking with Matt about it earlier today, and one other variable that we agreed could have been drastically different, and really the only one probably that could have been drastically different from what I've done, is that he does all his work in his garage. And even though it's not very cold in Austin, the nights have been in the 50 to 60 degree range lately, and my workspace stays room temperature all the time. So maybe, being that cold had something to do with the paint and shrinkage rates and things like that. Who knows? There's really not a whole lot to say at this point, other than we've concluded and proven absolutely nothing. I even took this plastic thing, which I sharpened on the end, and did some digging, and couldn't break any of this stuff loose. So, I mean, even if I go at it from the edge, it doesn't want to pop off. So, again, pretty inconclusive at this point. I certainly can't conclude that the primer is junk. I don't think that my theory about it possibly being the wrong paint in the bottle is correct. But now, to be clear, the first time Matt experienced this, it was 10 days after he did the spraying. So I'm gonna just put this away for a week or so, let it sit, and we'll see if anything changes. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But while I'm sitting here scratching at stuff, let's take a look at the Badger Digging on that just as hard. It's not coming off. Okay, now what happens when I dig at the... This is the straight white paint. Just regular 0 brilliant white. Digging at that. No issues there. I mean, that stuff's probably pretty well melted into the plastic. I mean, you could make the argument with that you could even go on without a primer. So, hey, there you go. Maybe I should consider that for my strategy. I don't know. But over here on the other side is the all-clad 309, and I can tell you for certain that it's not going anywhere. This stuff is just bulletproof. So, anyway, there you go. Not a whole lot to conclude, but at least I'm doing my due diligence and reporting the results as I should. So, there you go. Okay, here we are. It is more than a week later on this little experiment. In fact, let me just show you. It is April the 2nd, so it's about a week and a half since we last looked at this thing. I've just been busy. I wanted to give it at least a week, and then I've just been busy. As you can see, I've got some chaos going on at my bench right here. Brand new order of stuff from my favorite Hobby World USA. Anyway, you can see nothing has happened to the 0 primer. It is still intact and just sitting there happily doing nothing. But let's dig at it for a second here. See, little plastic deal with a sharp tip on it there. And no issues. I mean, it's definitely not peeling off. So that's that. Okay, so there you go, guys. That is the conclusion of the 0 primer test. What did we learn? Honestly, not much. Once again, this is an experiment that proves to be unsatisfyingly inconclusive. But that's the way it goes sometimes. The answers are not always black and white. Here's what I would say that we can conclude probably for sure, is that 0 primer is not subject to flaking off as a universal thing. I'm not going to say it's bad primer based on this. I don't like the way that it dusts a lot, and I don't really care for the thin coverage, but those are honestly the only complaints I could find for it based on what I did. Now, let's go back and address what Matt did. Do I think that Matt did it wrong? Absolutely not. I don't, for a couple of reasons. One, Matt is a super experienced and super methodical guy. Look, the dude's been published in the Weathering magazine, and you don't get there unless your skills are top notch. And he knows paint, he knows that you have to proceed methodically and consistently in order to get good paint finishes, which he does. So I don't suspect him of doing it wrong. Now, is he immune to making mistakes? Of course not, and even he'll tell you that. For somebody who's as good at model making as he is a remarkably humble guy. So, it's possible that he made a mistake. But here's reason number 2 that I don't think he did it wrong. He had the exact same thing happen to him twice under 2 different conditions. The first condition was on the Tamiya kit, and it took a week for the peeling to manifest itself. And then the second condition was on whatever that airplane fuselage was, and the peeling manifested itself overnight. Now, the one thing that in talking to him that he and I could sort of come up with that might have been a variable that caused a difference is his workshop is in his garage. And so overnight temperatures in there got down into the 40s, 50s, 60s. Is it possible that that caused the primer to fracture and peel? Who knows? Maybe it did. It's probably one of those things we're never going to really know the answer to. So, as I said, sometimes experiments just don't provide a hard conclusion, and you just have to go with it. At this point, I would say, would I use zero primer? And the answer is no. But that's not necessarily because I think it's horrible stuff, but because I already have a primer solution that I'm real happy with. For lacquer, I use All-Clad 309. For acrylic, I use Badger Stynylrez. So I have no reason to switch. It's also true that the zero primer is only available from basically one place in the United States. So again, it's just not really much of an issue for me. We really did this experiment because we were curious and just wanted to sort of like answer the question, what the heck happened? So that's it. That's where we're going to rest with that one. At any rate, I know it was kind of long and drawn out, but I hope that you at least found it sort of informative and interesting. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Much love.